No, come in, come in. Oh, hi, this is good. Now, come over here and have a look at this. Slightly chaotic. I promised you I might have another go at reading you this lost Narnian poem. And what I've found is some typescript, and then, which is incomplete, and then also, happily, some manuscript. So, what happened was this. I read you, last time, just this Canto 1, which sets the scene, and Canto 2 starts the actual story. So I was thinking, oh, I've got a good bit of this is fine. But then it just trailed off. There isn't even a rhyme. And then the next piece of typescript says Canto 4. So it's the rest of 2 and 3 that we're missing. But I've tracked down some of that. I've tracked down at least the end of 2. It may be slightly more difficult to read from the my not very good handwriting, but I thought we'd have a go. So, have a seat. So you remember my whole idea was that I had set as a homework for my children that I was teaching, imagine that you're a poet in Narnia, 1,500 years after the event, looking back to the golden age of the four the king and King Peter and Queen Susan and King Edmund and Queen Lucy, and of course you know their origin story too, but you know that they introduced a golden age and they sailed on the Splendor High Line, and then they mysteriously disappeared, and by the time Prince Caspian is around, Lewis says it was as long a gap between Caspian and the four children and us and Arthur. And of course, when they come back just themselves into Caspian's reign, for him it's amazing. It's like Arthur coming back. So I was imagining this poet looking back, and of course telling it all entirely from the Narnian point of view, because Lewis, of course, gives us scenes in our world and their world, and we move back and forth. But Tumnus, when Lucy said, I came from the wardrobe in the spare room, he thinks that Wardrobe is a great city in the bright land of Spare where eternal summer reigns, because Lucy says it's summer there. So I'm writing it from very much that Narnian perspective. The other thing, of course, is that these characters like Tumnus have become famous in legend, and to explain that Tumnus began, in some sense, the opening part of the story as a traitor is something that's got to be handled well. So we'll see what we think. You remember, I finished the little proem with the hope was kept alive that one day the children would return. The children would arrive, and not return. The children, that there were these 4 thrones, the which they could only be filled by Adam's flesh and blood, and the witch was, a usurper, and one day the true kings and queens would arrive. I said, in secret lairs by Holton Hill, a secret hope was burning still, a secret shared by beasts and birds, those ancient and mysterious words. And then I segued into the actual words that the beaver whispers, when Adam's flesh and Adam's bone sits at Cair Paravel enthroned, the evil time will be over and done. So, now we've had that poem, now we're going to get on with the story. So this is how I start Canto 2. Now, in that time, there dwelt a faun who never danced on moonlit lawn, or kept the feasts on starlit nights, for she forbade the ancient rites. He lived not far from Lantern Waste, and once the witch swept by in haste and summoned him with frosty breath, commanding him on pain of death that he should serve her as a spy, to watch the woods both far and nigh, for track or trace or trail or sign of children sprung from Adam's line, sons of Adam, daughters of Eve. If he should find, he should receive with tricks and shows of courtesy, but send her word in secrecy, that those who trespassed on her lands might be betrayed into her hands. She cast, before she turned to go, a bag of silver in the snow. Remember, said she, from this day, that you are mine and in my pay. And with these words she swept away. She left the fawn to fear and fret, trembling between reward and threat. He felt temptation's tightened noose, and took the taint with this excuse: "Well, there's no such creature anyway. There's no such creature anyway as I'm contracted to betray. Oh, there's talk of man in the old lays. No one believes it nowadays." He took the silver to his shame, and Mr. Tumnus was his name. So I guess I'm riffing on that book, Is Man a Myth? But now I imagine my audience being shocked to hear this story about Tumnus having been in the witch's pay. And Mr. Tumnus was his name. Yes, Mr. Tumnus, famed of old for gentle hand and heart of gold. He that was sire of his great line, he that sailed splendour higher line, he that returned from living death, he that was blessed with Aslan's breath, he that saw many a glorious day, was in his youth once in her pay. But with his shame we must recall how later he redeemed his fall, and held his silence hard and grim when evil Malgrim questioned him, where deep within the living hell of Malgrim's secret prison cell he waded gladly through great pain to win his honour back again. So Mr. Tumnus acquiesced with secret strivings in his breast, and feeling neither good nor brave, he took the silver to his cave. And then I have a little reflection on a kind of spy society, a secret society. Rereading this, I read it with almost a sharp, tender shock, because I've subsequently come to know some Lewis and Narnia enthusiasts in Romania. And apparently there was a translation into Romanian of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe just before the time that Ceausescu fell. And for them, it was almost like a novel of political liberation. The idea of this tyrant having your land, the grim captain of the secret police, the fear that others were spies, and yet the great hope that there might be a spring. I mean, we called those great releases of those a spring. And so you know, there was a great affection for this novel because it kindled hope. Now I reread what I wrote about it, and I feel it's almost as though I'd known that in advance. So Mr. Tumnus acquiesced. He took the silver to his cave. Then there's this little reflection. More ways than one the witch had found to spread her evil ways around. Of all oppressions, not the least was that she tempted bird and beast to work for her and serve her ends, and made them traitors to their friends, and trembling hearts afraid to die betrayed their kind and lived a lie. In every wood, by every hill, some wretched creature worked her will, and all her spies were kept in fear of what the other spies might hear, for each felt sure to be betrayed if he renounced his wicked trade. So Tumnus daily trudged the wood in search of Adam's flesh and blood, the sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, in whom he did not yet believe. He sought for fear if he should slack, he'd be betrayed behind his back. And so it chanced one frosty night, when snow was falling thick and white, that Tumnus, passing Lantern Waste, returning to his cave in haste, beheld what he did not believe, a lost and lonely child of Eve. It cannot be, he thought in fright, and hurried forward to the light. She turned to greet him with a smile that brought him to the time of trial. Would I be right? Should I believe you are in fact a child of Eve? He asked in friendly tones and sighed. My name is Lucy, she replied. Then under shows of courtesy, he hid his thoughts of treachery. With words and smile and bow and wave, he bid her welcome to his cave, not far away within the wood, a place of comfort, fire and food, where he might tell her of his land. And so they walked off, hand in hand. And as they trudged through winter's gloom, she spoke to him of bright, spare that where light and warmth forever played, the lovely land from whence she'd strayed. It nearly brought him to despair to learn that it was summer there. In your world fairest summer reigns. Here we have only winter's pains, where frost and snow fill dyke and ditch, he said, and inly cursed the witch. But outwardly looked bright and brave, and presently they reached his cave. Enter, Eve's child. It's my delight to welcome you to warmth and light. And you could see from Lucy's face she'd never seen a nicer place. Bright and tidy, trim and neat, cosy, comfortable, complete. And in the midst a table stood, a table carved of curious wood and spread with every kind of food. There was a chair at either end. One chair for me, one for a friend, as Mr. Thomas smiled and said, setting down tea and buns and bread. They sat down to a splendid meal, which lasted till his guest might feel, however nice the things one saw, there was no room for any more. And then they sat before the fire, and Tumnus piled the logs on higher, and entertained his guest with tales of forest life in hills and dales, from western wood to eastern sea, the lovely life that used to be. He spoke of magic midnight dances, of noble quests and lucky chances, of dwarves and dryads in the dells, and nymphs of rivers, springs and wells. He told of seeking secret treasure, of mirth and feasting without measure, where fauns and satyrs danced in line to wake from earth the sacred vine, and all the streams ran red with wine. He spoke of all the joy there'd been in summer when the woods were green, and blossoms broke on every bough. But that was then, it's winter now. He finished, muttering to himself, and took his flute from off a shelf to play, like Pan before the dawn, the magic music of the faun. Music to warm the coldest night and lap the listener in delight. Music that leapt and swooped and curled and swept you to another world, that made you want to dream and dance and cry and laugh and sleep at once. Enchanting music, strange and deep, that lulled Eve's daughter into sleep. He saw her settle, droop and sway. Softly he put his flute away. And then of course he's now have to begin the betrayal, but I think it's probably about as much time as we've got for that. We'll have perhaps the rest of Canto 2 some other time when I've had a chance to rescue it from manuscript into typescript. But I had fun doing it, and I think I read bits of it to my class. And but at some point, the sheer burden of work as a first-year teacher became too much for me, and I never finished it. But it's nice to be able to take it out and blow the dust off it and share it with you now. A pleasure. So thanks for dropping around and listening.